Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and today is my week 16 edition of my 2-round mock draft series. I do it every week, and the freest, easiest, and quickest way you can support this channel is by giving this video a thumbs up, even if you disagree with my picks and you haven't seen them yet, and to subscribe to the channel. That would be amazing. Really help me grow. And as always, up-to-date draft order, and we'll go 8 by 8 for all 64 picks, including the voided Miami Dolphins pick in the first round that for some reason people think I don't know about, as they've left comments in the other videos, because they're like, oh, the Eagles are picking 31st, not 32nd, because the Dolphins, where it's like the slide right before that had the Dolphins tamper. Let's get to the video. Who finds their way into the top 4, barring it being the Colts, who could do it, but I'm still doubtful that they'll figure out a way to get there. So it's Bryce Young, number 1, Will Anderson, number 2, Jalen Carter, number 3, Myles Murphy, number 4. I could see perhaps Detroit being a trade back spot, but I'm not doing trades, of course. But I think that they would be a team that would certainly be maybe looking to move out of that spot for a team like Carolina or the Colts to come out and get Stroud. Sort of a bidding competition in that sense. But as long as Detroit is holding that spot, I think that either Myles Murphy or one of the top corners, depending on who ends up being cornerback 1, I still think it's going to be Keely Ringo, kind of like the way it was with Derek Stingley. Even though Sauce is having one of the best rookie seasons of all time, Derek Stingley, if it wasn't for Sauce, people would be talking about like, wow, this guy is every bit of that number 3 overall pick. So it's a little bit unfair to make those comparisons right now. But with that said, Detroit, I have them taking an edge, and then Arizona takes the next best on the board, which is the cornerback, Keely Ringo. I got CJ Stroud obviously going next to the Colts. I feel like that's the most obvious pick between the Colts and the Panthers for as long as I'm just doing trades. Whichever one picks first is getting Stroud. Then we got Tyree Wilson going to the Atlanta Falcons, getting them some much-needed help on the edge. And then I got Carolina because they missed out. It could be Will Levis, maybe. But I like Quentin Johnston going to Carolina and then maybe settling with Matt Corral or getting a quarterback late in the second round, early third round. Because, you got to assume that Hendon Hooker is probably going to drop because of the late injury. So maybe Carolina, who I don't think there's any expectations that they're going to be some type of contender next year. I could see them maybe investing a second-round pick on Hooker, giving Corral a bit of a chance, and letting those two guys compete for the number 1 quarterback job. And then whichever one has the better year, if Hendon Hooker's able to get in towards the end of the year, that's the guy you go with. And you've either a late second or I think it was a mid-third round pick that they used on Corral. I mean, I don't think you mind spending a second and a third round pick to find your franchise quarterback. I think any team would take that deal. But until then, get him a different type of weapon opposite DJ Moore, who needs the help out there. I mean, Terrace Marshall is, finally getting it going a bit, but you need a legitimate threat on the other side. Robbie Anderson was supposed to be that guy. He never really was. So you get Quentin Johnston and give your quarterback, whoever it may be, a real fighting opportunity with the weapons on the outside. And then here come the Eagles, and I think they just take the best player available, and I think Christian Gonzalez would be that guy. I think it's certainly going to be one of the corners. I think that could be a guarantee. Whoever's the highest one on their board. Just because you got Slay, who's a little bit older, Bradbury's a little bit older, you might be looking to have that third guy who can play on the outside and a nice smooth transition away. And getting all this depth on the defense, the way the Eagles are so good at doing it over the last couple of years, it's invaluable. It's invaluable because if you get an injury now, so look at how many teams get injuries and then an entire position group just goes straight to hell because they don't have the depth, they don't have the development. The Eagles are one of the best at it, which is why they're so good right now. And this is a great opportunity for them to take advantage of the Saints not having a great year and them having potentially a top 10 pick. Getting somebody who can be an instant impact as well as somebody you can build around for the future at a key position on the field. I got the Raiders going Brian Breezy. I don't mind it. I don't mind it. He's definitely coming out because he knows he's going to be a top 10, top 12 pick. And I think the Raiders, who are just desperate for some type of consistent pass rush, would be happy to add him and have him play a 5 tech, a 3 tech next to either Max Crosby or Chandler Jones to try and free them up for more success. And I got Joey Porter going to the Jags. This is the guy, play him opposite Tyson Campbell. Good little young cornerback group there. Allows you to get out of the Shaq Griffin contract as well, which I think you're able to do. Got Michael Mayer going to the Texans. The best weapon on the board, basically. When you have Dameon Pierce, who is a real force on the offense, putting him with Bryce Young, and then you get Bryce Young, the best thing a young quarterback can have, which is a reliable tight end. And Michael Mayer is a great blocker as well. So he's a perfect all downs tight end, all situations tight end. So you can really get the most out of him, really maximize the value of this pick. And I got 2 linemen going back to back here, Paris Johnson to the Steelers, and then Broderick Jones to the Packers. Both teams are in need of tackle help. There's a lot of question marks about the future of those positions on both teams. So I think you kind of solve those problems here with both of these guys. Then the Seahawks get their next corner opposite of Tariq Woolen to pair to treble with Kobe Bryant in the cornerback room. And now you got a great young cornerback group that's really overachieved with some of those value picks. Now you get a top level prospect here to mix into that cornerback room and continue its growth to go back to really what gave Seattle a lot of success, which was a lot of depth in the secondary. And I got Jalen Hyatt going to the Patriots. I like the fit. I like Hyatt's skill set. I like his dominance at Tennessee. And it's somebody that you can just get the ball in his hands and who's not going to lateral the football when you're tied and throw it across the field backwards to somebody on the other team for them to have a walk-off touchdown when you could have just gone to overtime. Instead, Jacoby Myers. But they're also going to lose Nelson Aguilar. They could probably cut Kendrick Bourne as well. So if they have Jacoby Myers, it'll be Myers, Devontae Parker, Tyquan Thornton. Thornton's more of like a stretching the field, speedster guy. So you have Hyatt in there who can play in that slot role and be a great complement to the other receivers in the receivers room, and try to get Mac Jones back on track with a real offensive coordinator. I think that'll be another thing that'll really boost this offense back up to what it was last year, where Mac Jones was actually playing very well and looking like the best quarterback in the class. Here are the Jets. Brian Branch, it's a great fit. I took Peter Skoronski to play guard for the Detroit Lions. I've sort of been playing around with the last couple weeks with picking Skoronski with the intention of him being a guard and plugging him in with Detroit, who's got a good offensive line already, borderline great offensive line, and you get rid of the weakest link, which is the right guard, and you plug in Skoronski. And now look at that, how complete that offensive line is with Sewell, Decker, not Kelly. What's his name? Why am I blanking on this? Ragnow. And then Jonah Jackson. And then you got Skoronski there at the other guard. And then if you pick up an injury, you got Skoronski who can kick out to tackle, need be in a pinch for a couple of games. And then you can slide somebody else that's more of a pure guard into that position. I think it just really opens up so much. And it's really building, again, off of what Detroit has been doing from the beginning of the Dan Campbell era, which is working on those trenches and those key front lineman positions on both sides of the ball. And I got Tampa going Will Levis. Kind of falls into their lap here. I think it makes sense. DeJuan Jones, tackle, going to the Titans. just a monster who will go to that right tackle position, potentially left tackle, because Taylor Lewan has openly said he's probably going to get cut due to his injury history and the fact that it would save the team $14 million. So I think that type of self-awareness, maybe he knows something ahead of time that they've sort of talked about it. So tackle is going to become a giant need. If it's considering it is already, it'll become even bigger than that once Taylor Lewan's no longer even on the roster. Trenton Simpson going to Washington, pairing him with Jamin Davis. This just seems like a Washington pick. They're one of those teams where they kind of draft weird. Sometimes early on, it was kind of like how Seattle used to do it when they were taking like LJ Collier and Jordan Brooks, and you're just kind of like, what? Like, what? Not saying that they're taking bad players. Not saying Trent Simpson's a bad player at all. He's probably the only linebacker worthy of a first-round pick. But I just feel like this is something Washington would be willing to do, especially because they need a linebacker. And, they can use those day 2, early day 3 picks on positions that have a lot more depth to them, perhaps. You got Jordan Addison going to the Chargers. He just kind of fell into it and couldn't resist taking him, to be honest. Once he gets there, you kind of got to take him. Dolphins, of course, void. And then I got Anthony Richardson going to the Giants still. As long as he's declared, that means that he's going to be a first-round pick. A team's either going to trade up back into the first round to get him if he tumbles, or he'll go probably shockingly much earlier than this because a team will fall in love with the traits and feel like they can develop him over a year or two. Looking at perhaps the Jets, maybe they go Mike White for a full year and let Richardson sit. Looking at maybe Washington as well. Tampa could be one. I think Detroit's sort of out on the quarterback class this year. But yeah, Anthony Richardson to the Giants gives them a little more options because they probably won't be able to get Daniel Jones to a long-term deal if they do bring him back at all. So JSN going to Baltimore, it makes all the sense in the world. I think pretty much everyone's settled in. I think Bijan Robinson going to the Broncos is another one where it really just works, considering also the way the board fell. Osiris Torrance to the Cowboys, again, it just works perfectly for them. Darnell Washington going to get some first-round buzz, people are saying, and just being that monster on the field for Cincinnati. It's an excuse to give another weapon to Burrow while also providing options for the offense on other downs as well. Isaiah Foskey and Jared Verse going back-to-back here. I like them in these spots. I mean, Verse could go before him, vice versa. But I think this is about where these guys are going to start going. Maybe you'll see a trade up to maybe get a Verse or a Foskey by Minnesota or Kansas City. Maybe if they like one in particular way more than the other, they'll probably try and make a move to compete with the other to make sure they get him. Antonio Johnson, again, kind of like JSN to Baltimore, he just works with Buffalo. And I got Gervin Dexter, who closes out the first round, the 5th-year option, as a pairing with Jordan Davis. A different type of interior defensive lineman compared to Jordan Davis, and can be somebody, again, long-term depth, short-term depth, long-term replacement for some of the more veteran players on that interior. Allows you to get rid of some of those bigger contracts. And here we go in the second round. Felix Anudike going to the Texans, getting them an edge rusher. Devin Witherspoon coming in to Pittsburgh. They need to get a corner. Their corner group is kind of butt cheeks, especially with a couple of the guys they can probably afford to get rid of. William Jackson's got a $13 million cap hit that they're just certainly going to want to clear up. Noah Sewell going to Seattle. Pair him up with Jordan Brooks. It's a typical Seattle pick for me. They got Anton Harrison going to the Rams. They need a strong tackle. No boom and the injuries and stuff hasn't really worked out the way they were hoping for, so they need to figure out a way to get some stars on that offensive line. Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back, going to Alabama. A weapon on the offense. Again, I think Cliff Kingsbury's going to be gone anyway. Clark Phillips III going to the Colts, helping out that cornerback group. Eli Ricks, who it's questionable whether he comes out or not, but if he does come out, I assume he's thinking he'll be a top 50, top 40 pick. So I got him going to Atlanta. And then BJ Ojolari going to the Panthers to be opposite of Brian Burns. Still no quarterback for Carolina, but I think I get to that eventually. But there's options. There's options out there with Hooker and McKee, and maybe a quarterback really does great at a workout and finds their way to move up, kind of like Bailey Zappi did. You never know. The Saints, I'm going with Siaki Ika to your defensive lineman. Jalen Duncan going to the Raiders. Play out at the right tackle position, opposite of Colton Miller. You got Mozzie Smith, big time interior defensive lineman, going to Jacksonville. Continue to build that defensive front. Then I got back-to-back edge rushers. Nolan Smith going to the Browns. Put him in the mix there with Garrett and Clowney, who will be going into the last year of his deal. I think he's on a 2-year deal. And then Andre Carter, who just became eligible because of the bill that passed. I'm going to Pittsburgh, and I know that people are like, oh, Alex Highsmith has a dozen sacks this year. Great. Well, he's going in. This is the second to last year of his contract. Next year will be the final year of his contract. And he hasn't produced like that, like the way he has this year over these couple of game stretches, having a couple of big games in his career up until this point. So once TJ Watt comes back and it becomes more of a rotation opposite of TJ Watt, where Smith is not the highest guy, what will his pressure to sack rate look like? I think it's just a lot safer to get another edge rusher in there, because if Highsmith regresses, goes back to what he kind of was before this year, or if he really excels and then you can't afford him, you have an out on both sides with Andre Carter, and you get pick up an injury throughout the year. You have an out here, and Andre Carter is a quality edge rusher to have. Then you got Jordan Battle going to the Packers. Adrian Amos is on the outs. And Darnell Savage has seen a lot of success coming up and being a nickel guy, so allows them to sort of play around with that continuously, even without Amos on the roster. I took Josh Downs to Seattle. Another weapon out there. Continue to build the weapons. You don't have really a third receiver on that team. I know it's not necessarily a need, but I think this would be a great spot considering you've already invested in the defense with the first 3 picks of the draft that I had. It was Jalen Carter, it was Cam Smith, and it was Noah Sewell. So you invested in 3 levels of the defense there. So now go out and get an offensive weapon for Geno Smith, who for sure is going to be brought back. And then Darnell Wright going to the Patriots. This is your Isaiah Wynn replacement, as he probably goes out into free agency. And if he doesn't, then maybe you got an interior guy that you can have. Or, Darnell Wright plays right tackle. There's a lot of possibilities here. It's sort of like what's going on in Tennessee. You want to be prepared that you need the tackle already, and if you lose the one guy you got because you don't bring him back or you cut him, then you're definitely going to need a tackle. And I think Darnell Wright, very under the radar with how well he's played at Tennessee this year. Then you got the Jets, Henry To'oTo'o, linebacker to the Jets. Trying to get something in there. CJ Mosley's good, I guess, but he's getting older, bigger contract. Try to replace him with somebody else. Then Jalen Jones going to Detroit, filling that cornerback need. Emmanuel Forbes going to the Bucks. A big cornerback need for them is going to be coming up with Murphy Bunting and Jamel Dean becoming free agents. They got Zach Harrison, edge rusher, going to Tennessee. They really need one. So this is how you go out and get one in this scenario. DJ Turner, cornerback, Michigan, to Washington, filling out some of their needs at that cornerback position in the secondary. Continue to build that secondary up. As you know, the other teams in that division are getting more and more firepower at the receiver positions. You got to assume Dallas and the Giants are going to do that, which is why you see there the Giants picking up Rashee Rice there at the bottom, getting that outside receiver they were hoping they would get from Kenny Golladay. And in between those 2 picks, Jacqueline Roy going to the Chargers, helping that squishy interior, and then Cody Mock going to the Dolphins, filling out that tackle spot. very desperate need for them on the offensive line. They've gotten some good play out of Armstead when he's played. Connor Williams has played quite well. You got Robert Hunt, but you need to figure out those two other positions on the offensive line, and you got to figure it out quick because you do have a ready-to-win now offense in every other aspect except those two very, very weak spots on the offensive line. John Michael Schmidt's the most pro-ready center for sure going to the Bears. He might be the most under-the-radar best offensive lineman in year one, kind of like what we saw with Creed Humphrey in Kansas City. Carolina finally takes their quarterback. I talked about it a little bit earlier when I was talking about the Quentin Johnston pick. At pick 58, grabbing a quarterback and letting him compete with a quarterback you took at 90-something, just past draft, finding out, letting them compete and picking the best one and hopefully getting a franchise quarterback out of there. If someone told you could trade the 58th pick and the 90-whatever pick for your franchise quarterback, every single team would go out of their way to do that. So this is not some type of throwing a pick in the fire type of a deal as people try to make it seem. Then I got the Cowboys going Zach Charbonnet. You're going to lose Tony Pollard or you're going to lose Zeke. So, and your offense has operated at its best. Dak Prescott has operated at his best when he's got a strong running game, that two-headed monster, fresh running backs. So you want to make sure that you still have that at your disposal. Garrett Williams going to the Bengals. Cam Taylor-Britt's played pretty well, but you're going to lose Eli Apple. You're going to lose, forget the other guy's name, but you're going to have Hilton. You're going to have Owuzie. You're going to have Cam Taylor-Britt. You can slide Garrett Williams in there, who could also play a little bit of safety if you need him to, if the Jesse Bates negotiations go to hell and you don't bring him back. So then you can have Dax Hill and Garrett Williams maybe playing a little bit of safety. Williams can come down, play on the outside, play in the slot also in dime situations. You got a lot of options here, especially against some of these high-powered offenses that we're seeing more and more come into the AFC North. And then we got Cedric Tillman, wide receiver, going to Kansas City. Getting a bigger body wide receiver, you're going to lose one or two of the wide receivers currently on the roster. So keep replenishing that position. You know that you don't need to really invest high in the receiver room, but you want to invest in different types of wide receivers who can play different roles in the offense. You got Sky Moore now with Tillman, maybe bring back Juju, and you got a nice little group of three there. And then Drew Sanders going to the Lions, helping out that linebacker group, pairing him up with Malcolm Rodriguez. Andrew Voorhees going to the Bills, figure out that interior offensive line for Buffalo, improve on that running game, hopefully, in the process. And then I threw a fun pick at the wall here in Zay Flowers. Yeah, I think he's going to be a second-round pick, a mid day 2 pick. And I'm looking at the Eagles, and I'm going, would he be the best player on the board for them at this point? Would he be somebody that they're willing to throw into that offense? Another option, one of those little guys, get the ball in his hands and let him do his work. Protect Jalen Hurts. You don't always have to have him rolling out. You don't always have to have him holding the ball in the pocket for long periods of time, while you have guys like Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown figure out ways to get open running their routes, running those 5-step, 7-step drop routes, while you have, Goddard, a different type of underneath player. When you had Quez Watkins, and he's been okay in some games, but I think with Zay Flowers, what you're getting is what you're hoping to get out of Jalen Reagor, that type of player, which is a unique gadget type of player to have in that offense. You can design packages around him, get the ball in his hands 5-6 times a game, and in those 5 or 6 manufactured touches, you could probably bust out some big plays, maybe some big-time touchdowns to really keep the offense moving, because he is so good at that, getting the ball in his hands and then running after the catch. And there you have it. 2-round mock draft. Leave your hate tweets, hate comments, whatever, in the comment section below. But please leave a thumbs up and subscribe, regardless of how you feel about how smart or how dumb I may be when it comes to picking for your team, at least in the first 2 rounds. Thanks for coming, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.